Hi everyone, and welcome to the Liberator Archetype and how the Liberator Archetype can help free us from tyrannical beliefs within ourselves and society, and how it can show up in its light form and its shadow form, those things that actually can creep up, or things that we can get pulled into, that actually takes us into the shadow element of the liberator. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Eileen Burns. I'm a healer, coach and therapist, and I basically also am a spiritual business and spiritual marketing strategist. And I'm very passionate about helping healers and light workers become more soul aligned in their mission and their purpose in relation to, not just creating a business, but creating a business that is very soul aligned and being able to attract the right clients that are soul aligned, and about unlocking people's gifts. And I do that through a variety of strategies as someone that's studying healing for over 30 years and all sorts of different modalities. But one of the things that I really love doing is using archetypes and even the inner child perspective and different spiritual tools to help people see more clearly and in many ways quickly certain patterns that are showing up in certain archetypes that is playing out in their life, that is keeping them stuck, or where is actually their superpower. So today, go back to the liberator. For this, session, I'm just going to use Caroline Mizzy's card on the liberator. And I'm going to talk about a little bit about her interpretation of the light and the shadow, and then I'm going to go into in relation to how I see things in relation to what's happening in the moment and in people's spiritual businesses and their own way that they show up in the world at the moment. So when we look at the light attribute, I'm just going to look at and share some of Caroline's kind of interpretation, and then I'm going to explore a little bit more. But as she says, the liberator helps us to liberate us from the self-inflicted tyranny of negative thoughts, patterns, and beliefs, and even things like spiritual sluggishness, right? Poor nutrition, destructive relationships, or addictive behavior. So anything that is we need to free yourself from, that is kind of destroying us, or are imposing something on us. Because when we're on the spiritual journey, it's so important that we take our journey serious. If you're a light worker, you are leading by example. And if you're, for example, someone who is a healer or spiritual teacher in some way, you teach certain things, your audience, your clients, your students are looking to you to lead by example. So it's so important that, you take your journey seriously and look at freeing yourself from the things that are your biggest challenges and the things that keep you stuck. So, for example, I'm not going to go to a nutritionist that does not, is not walking the talk. I'm not going to go to a spiritual teacher that has not got even the basics of their spiritual journey, or certain. If I'm going to a spiritual teacher for a certain area, I expect them to be, evolved and certainly experienced and living that part of their life in a healthy way. Now, the liberated, the invaluable ally, is freeing us from old entrenched beliefs and attitudes, right? And you don't have to be a charismatic leader to have this archetype. So when we look at society at the moment, we all can see there's a big rise in the liberator archetype, right? That is happening naturally. It's part of the cycle at the moment because we've had so much tyranny in many ways, and that bullying and control and old structures where there's been deception, manipulation, and trying to take people's freedom away, trying to also appear as if the libertarian is coming forward to help certain minority groups, but they're using very manipulative tactics to actually take other people's power and freedom away in a very destructive way. And that's another element of the shadow. So what you've always got to understand when we look at any archetype and we see it within ourselves, we have to always see the light and the shadow element. And even when we're using that archetype to help clients, we have to be aware that the light and shadow element of all archetypes is within us all. Even sometimes we find it hard to see it, it is within us all. Sometimes it's stronger in areas than others. And in the shadow element, the liberator then forces their level of freedom from what they want or what they want to achieve. They become, in many ways, can be that they're the one that causes tyranny, right? And the shadow liberator manifests in corporate. We can see this in so much where we're seeing a shift in where people are wanting financial freedom, right? And they want a certain amount of power. Can you call it power freedom? Because they want this freedom to have power over other people. So what they're doing is they're imposing their way of doing things for them to have a certain amount of freedom, but at what cost for everybody else. And we're seeing it in political, we're seeing it in religious and spiritual leaders who impose their own tyranny over others. And we can all have that to different degrees. And sometimes it's because it's our triggers, or we're very passionate about something, or we feel very strongly about something that we think we're right, or because of certain experiences. But when we see the liberator, it's so important to understand that the liberators fight for freedom, the liberators desire to help free oneself or others from some self-inflicted tyranny, can actually bring out other things that's going on within us. Because if you think about it, what motivates the liberator? It's when people feel as if their freedoms are getting taken away, where they feel as if someone's trying to bully them, control them, right? Where we'll also see it when there's, we can also see it in the rebel archetype where they're very anti-establishment and they just want to break all the rules. And that there can be some of that kind of weaving in the liberator where there's a certain amount of freedom for them and a certain group, or how they see. So it's always important to also understand that even within an archetype, it's how we see things. And how we see things is we never see the whole picture, because as human beings, we only see things through our lens, the lens how we see something. And that shot is almost like that little bit of a video shot, or that angle of the picture, or that angle into someone's life or an organization, one angle. And if we're very triggered and we're very fearful and very angry, we can see things always very extreme and get irrational and can be very black and white thinking. It's freedom or nothing. It's almost where it can actually be very chaotic and destructive, or it's like, this is what's happening, this is what we should do, and only we do it my way, or how I see things, or like almost it's this where someone is in many ways, if you don't see things my way or want to do it my way, or we should do it this way, it's almost like there's a judgment that well, it's not really judgment, it's you're controlling, you're trying to be tyrannical over other people, and you're trying to take their freedom of choice, freedom of opinion away. And it's always important as the liberator, the wise, more spiritually discerning liberator, to understand when we seek freedom, when we're helping people free them from their own tyranny and from destruction, is that we don't get to a state that we are just want to break down things that work, and that we're not, we're being very irrational, that we're in a fear mode, we're in a survival mode, and we assume that we know everything, because the true, a true libertarian who is doing it for the right reasons is also going to be open-minded, willing to be open-minded for the freedom of mind, and the freedom of the ability to someone else to challenge them and to see things from a different perspective. But if you only have your one way of seeing things, and you're very tyrannical in that way, and judging everything without an open discussion, without wanting to see the bigger picture or something else, you can fall into the shadow element. So how, obviously that can show up so many ways in our work. So for example, when we're helping people free them from their thoughts and their minds, for example, I'll give you some ideas. So, I've studied lots of things, and I'm somebody that loves learning and loves taking part in people's courses. So other than training a lot of disciplines, my hobbies have been spiritual courses. So I'm always signing up for spiritual development, soul courses, and through the years. And so you learn all people's different take on spirituality, and help you see things in the world and things from a different perspective. And it helped you open up and see where you were close-minded, or had lack of awareness, or not seeing things from a different perspective, or where you were just going by what someone told me. Thankfully, very early in my journey, I learned not to completely believe what someone taught you, because it was only how they saw it, and in what their level of awareness. It was what they were taught or what they experienced. And my own experience is a lot to do with some rare medical challenges, and also what some people would call it psychic and spiritual phenomena that many people couldn't explain. I learned that unless people experience things, they'd often try to teach you or tell you something from something they don't know. They think they know. And even when you have an experience that is your experience, that doesn't mean that it's the same experience from everyone. And as you go along your spiritual path, for example, what you thought you learned or you understood, you realise the more that you go on, you don't know anything. In many ways, that there is so many layers to things. And, it's, for example, even tools, I always tell people don't get too attached to their tools, because people often, when they're coming in, early in their career, they come across certain tools and think they're phenomenal and think they're the best thing. And at that point, it is the best thing they've ever experienced. But guess what? There's even more tools and techniques. There's more things. And there's also things that we get taught where it's the way it's worded. We are taking on kind of only that level of consciousness we have, that level of awareness. So we can say things very loosely, but don't really understand what it fully means. And it's like everything. If you're going to help people and you're going to help yourself move away from self-limiting beliefs, it's a constant journey of being open and not having this thing that you know all, right? And that you've got it all sussed. Because when you think you know all and you've got it all sussed, well, guess what? You're not free from looking at things from a different perspective. You're not free from, basically from your own limiting beliefs, because your own limiting beliefs has kept you into thinking this one way of thinking and perception, and you may be missing a lot of things. So that's really, really important, as we are open to open and free, you know, for yourself and other people, that we are expansive and that we're not in that situation we're constantly judging, because we in life we do only see things through a small lens, and that lens is related to a past experience, but also only the privilege that we have at that moment to see a small percentage of what we think goes on. Because look at social media, for example. That is one of the biggest things that is so interesting. If you look at social media, how people believe that they kind of, it's almost because they see a picture of someone and they see all their Instagram or their Facebook posts, they kind of think they know them and they kind of got them sussed. Or they even look at celebrities and they think they've got them sussed, they're good, bad, or what they've done or what they've not done, because they're seeing certain pictures in small fragments that are only tiny little shots of small situations, where there's often so much more because there's so much to us all. And it's like all sorts of situations. People, if they took a clip or a video of us in different circumstances, could make different judgments, but they may not know the whole picture. So when we're freeing ourselves, we have to have the ability to free ourselves from that there can be a bigger picture, right? And that, of course, help ourselves understand that freedom is so important, right? And that is so powerful. So the libertarian, the person that has that strong energy of helping break free mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, is really important at the moment. But it has to come with spiritual discernment. And for example, if you look at the truth community, right, there's a lot in the truth community, and even though you could class some, you know, in some ways light workers, sometimes in the truth community they can talk the talk and they want the truth, but they are not doing the inner work. They really aren't. They think they're doing the inner work, but they're not really, and they're coming from base levels, all fear, all survival. So they're driven in so much fear. And I'm not saying that fear and triggering things when things are wrong, that it cannot pivot people to do amazing and powerful things. Of course it can, because sometimes in fearful situations and dangerous situations, we can create power. But if we are in the survival response, which is linked to trauma, that is linked to our past experience and how we view life. For example, if you're very black and white thinking, you may be not very rational in your the way that you're triggered and the reactions that you do to move from into more freedom. You might just start thinking that the only way to break free and to help people is certain ways, that actually there may be bigger pictures and you're not seeing it, or you may assume something because again you're seeing it through that lens and you're triggered because of what you're saying. So there's the liberator archetype is very powerful at the moment, but it can have its own destruction, particularly when the liberator archetype is telling everybody else what they should do and shouldn't do, and doing it from a place of like very triggered, very angry, peed off, basically, in a state where, and we can all do it to different degrees, but it's when it becomes that you're pushing your tyranny or pushing your opinion and your lens, how you see the world, on everybody else, rather than helping and encourage open-mindedness and helping people expand and look at things from a different perspective, rather than bringing more judgment and everything, right? Or rather than this is what's going on, and almost like as if, you know, you're the all-seeing eye, when the reality is we're not. And the liberating archetype is almost, you know, it's about freedom for all as much as possible, helping trying to bring things from a balanced perspective, a healthy perspective, rather than how we think it should be and how we should be breaking free, if that makes sense. Now, if you're strong liberator archetype, you know, it's often a lifelong pattern of helping to free others from injustices, right? So if you're someone, there is some people who naturally go to jobs, they end up being, you know, they go into workplaces and then they end up being, you know, working for the unions or whatever, and they end up doing it, or people who sometimes even go into legal aid and things like that, where they want to injustice or go into certain jobs and fight for people that have certain injustices. Some charities are even started up with that to help people, you know. But the reality is that each individual that starts that up is starting up from their own wounding. So if we think about, you know, even the wounded tailor and the inner child, if you don't understand what wounding triggers you to, how could you say, in a way, fight for certain causes, you can actually bring in your own wounding and your own limitations and distortions about that organisation, about that thing to the situation because of your own pain. And where you have issues, so if you're anti-establishment, or you assume that everybody in government is corrupt, or you assume everybody in organisations are certain this, you've got a very black and white thinking, and you've got a lot of wind and anger around that, you know, you can be bringing in, there's a, it's not a libertarian, it's not a free, you're not opening things up, you're not helping freedom, you're trying to impose just something because of a view that may be irrational, and that's so important to understand. So, you know, it's, for example, if you're a victim of something, many healers go into the, you know, and the healing work because of their own painful experiences. So because of that, we can bring a wind in. I know that personally can show up for me. There's certain work that I don't do, and there's certain work does trigger me, and sometimes certain types of people, even in work, can I try avoid because I know I'm not the best person. But for example, my own journey through a lot of wounding of the medical system, or even wounding, even though I'm passionate about holistic and spiritual medicine, wounding with people who are gaslighting the client, gaslighting the students, are coming from a very distorted perception and often naivety, because they're not wise enough and spiritual wise enough. They're imposing a lot of things on clients and people that are very damaging. That triggers me. So that can make me a wee bit, you know, obviously be a wee bit more cautious, maybe sometimes not as balanced looking at things because it is wounding. So we're always working on it, something that I'll work on. But if you're not aware that that's there, you can go into your polarity. And it's so important to understand where you've had triggers in your life. So if you had triggers by certain establishments, certain organisations, have you certain views, beliefs about these things, these organisations, these groups? If you do, then it can be bringing in prejudice, bias, distortions, and that can stop us freeing ourselves, and can also make us push certain ways. So it's always important to remember that. But again, as I said, it's a powerful archetype, and to help understand, let people and your clients understand, which is so important. It's so important to help people understand that we all deserve, if you think about freedom in relation to sovereignty, which is, you know, in relation to sovereignty to do with the ruler and the leader archetype and things, more where we all should have personal sovereignty. But we have a lot of distortion in society where this freedom of other people to be what they want at the expense and destruction of other people, and often vulnerable people. We're seeing this in relation to certain insane things that's going on in society, where children, certain things even happening in education, which would be regarded as grooming before, grooming in other places and environments would be classed as, you know, grooming, is now getting pushed to do with certain things and certain other groups' freedom, which of course it's important that everyone has a balanced look, but where it actually becomes that it can be potentially very harmful for other groups of people and put other people in danger. This is where there is tyranny, another group trying to impose what others, so they're taking other people's freedoms away to impose what they believe is their personal freedom. But often it's not then about freedom, it's actually about other people trying to control other people. And it's so important when we're in even the truth community, the light warrior community, the communities which are trying to awaken people to things where we're going on, that we are not trying to impose or in many ways kind of destroy other people, because that can be, it's like a power thing where we're trying to push constantly that we're right and everybody's wrong, and not be open discussion and not see things from a wider or more spiritually discerning, or it's almost like you're looking up from things from a higher perspective. We're always trying to move into that so that we can open the space and open the awareness. When we try and push and go from helping free ourselves, but to push it on others, to be aggressive about it, to be, really, that there's a difference and a different energy, and it's so important to notice when that's coming through, because we can all fall into that, and especially when at the moment, we're all being triggered by different things to different degrees, and we'll have different wounding in relation to our triggers. So, please like, subscribe, and share. And if you would love to work deeper with archetypes and inner child work, and really go so deep in your work so that you can feel more confident and strong, each month I have a monthly archetypal coaching and heal session. And if you join my monthly gold or quantum Lightworkers Portal, you get automatic access to that, and you get access to a plethora of meditations, healing transmissions, and all sorts of different courses, depending on what level of membership that you choose. You can also buy each month there is a new archetype or archetypes we choose to do healing on and coaching on, and you can choose just to buy them as standoff or one-offs, or buy or access the monthly portal. But I would urge you to join the new Lightworkers Portal. There's on a beta launch. If you're on in August, there is a beta launch offer for a certain limited time, and if you take the gold or the quantum level, you'll get access to a new Telegram group where I'm going to be sharing a lot more things, and there's going to be a lot more exciting content added, a lot of tools to help people really take their purpose, their mission, and even their manifesting to a whole new level. And I'm going to be sharing more about that soon. Thank you for watching, everyone. As I said, please like, subscribe, and share, just to support us, because as you can imagine, anything that's on the internet at the moment that's relation to spirituality and certain things has a certain amount of challenges to sometimes reach a wider audience. So I do appreciate any support. Bye for now. Bye-bye.